University of West Georgia operates a fleet of vehicles, ranging from all-terrain vehicles to bucket trucks to achieve its objectives. We depend on these conveyances to perform maintenance, secure our campus, and provide services to our students. Over the past several years, the university has increased its fleet and vehicle operations while simultaneously increasing its student population. Simply put, as the university grows, so does the risk of injury and property damage. Since all vehicles are projectiles weighing up to several thousand pounds, the primary objective of this training module is to reduce vehicular accidents and injuries. Other objectives include providing information on insurance and to satisfy our commitments to our insurance providers. We will take a look at some campus case files, review accident statistics, provide some guidance on regulations, and identify some general and campus-specific issues. This course includes questions and answers that help ensure that you understand the material. At the end of this training video, you will be prompted to complete a test to ensure that you understand the material. Throughout the module, you will be reminded of important points that you will see on the test. It is recommended that you pay close attention to these slides. Case file number 1. A maintenance employee dutifully walked around his service van to make sure there were no obstructions, but he took a few minutes to complete his paperwork. When he backed up, he did not notice that a small sedan had pulled in behind him. The result was a liability claim against the university. By taking a look at where, when, and how vehicle accidents occur on campus, we can get a better understanding of how we can avoid them. Accidents will happen. In fact, vehicles are the most common cause of accidental death, as well as the most common cause of work-related fatalities. The odds are that you already know someone who was killed or injured in a vehicle accident. And when you are behind the wheel of a vehicle, you are also performing the single task that places you at the most risk of injuring someone. Let's first take a look at when accidents occur. August and September have proved themselves to be more accident-prone, and the reasons are obvious. Students are trying to orient themselves around campus, trying to find the best place to park. Campus employees are also trying to respond to the influx of the students. This stress, and other factors, all increase the probability of an accident. The Office of Risk Management, Environmental Health and Safety calls this time period critical days and launches an awareness and mitigation effort. Simply put, the fewer vehicles that are on our roads, the lower the probability of an accident. We should also explore where our vehicle accidents are taking place. As you can see from the graph, almost half of all vehicle accidents occur in parking lots. Campus and city streets is the second largest group. Highway accidents occur only in about 1 in 20 accidents. Most of the on-campus accidents occur in locations that we can expect them to, at intersections along West Georgia Drive. But as you can see from the map of the campus, there's also a concentration of accidents in parking lots as well, particularly in the smaller lots. Finally, let's take a look at what the driver was doing when the accident occurred. Backing a vehicle represents the largest portion of at-fault accidents. By Georgia law, if you back up and hit something with your vehicle, you are automatically at fault. Additionally, if you rear-end someone, you are automatically at fault. If we simply take precautions while backing up and following another vehicle, the university could reduce its vehicle liability claims significantly. In almost all cases, the accidents were caused by driver error. There are very few instances when vehicle engineering, such as brakes, contributed to an accident. And even several of the incidents in which the university driver was not at fault still could have been prevented if our driver was simply paying a little more attention to what was going on around him. Important point. Most at-fault vehicle accidents have occurred when the driver was backing up. Case file number 2. A student employee was approaching the TLC light. As she was attempting to get her ID card out of her cigarette case on the passenger's seat, she rear-ended the vehicle in front of her. The result was a liability claim against the university. The primary reason why driving on campus is challenging is congestion. There are simply a lot of cars and a lot of people all operating in the same space. Introduce to this environment the distractions of cell phone use and texting, coupled with the culture of people walking out in front of cars, and you've got all the elements for elevated risk. There are several areas of high pedestrian and vehicle traffic on campus. The first is the TLC light. This is the main access point for students walking from the apartments, parking lots, and Greek Village. West Georgia Drive is also the main conduit for vehicles traveling between the east and west sides of campus. Another location is the UCC turnaround. This also has a high density of pedestrians, often going in many directions. The operations in this area include trucks accessing the food court docks, metered parking, and student drop-offs. The UCC itself is a high-traffic building, as it houses our campus mail, Excel Center, food court, and ID card services. The crosswalks near the Education Center, Biology, and Food Services buildings are also areas that are congested, especially during peak times when classes are letting out. The number one contributing factor is driver distraction. There are basically 3 kinds. Visual distractions include anything that takes your attention from the road and your environment, whether they're outside the vehicle, such as road signs, ball games, or accidents, or inside the vehicle, such as changing the radio station or monitoring an engine gauge. Tactile distractions are those that may take your hands off the wheel and include smoking, eating, and operating a radio or cell phone. Cognitive distractions also take your attention away from what you're doing. They could be thoughts of problems with your boss, listening to the radio, talking to your friends, or even thinking about what you intend to do once you reach your destination. Because of the pedestrian and vehicle density on campus, it is imperative that you limit your distractions and focus on safety as much as possible. You should not eat, drink, use tobacco, or even listen to the radio or talk to vehicle occupants while you're driving. Additionally, per university policy, using radios and cell phones is prohibited while driving a university vehicle on campus. The only exception is university police officers using their car radios. For all others, you should pull over to talk on the cell phone or radio, or simply return the call when you get to your destination. Texting or dialing, which combines all 3 distractions, is strictly prohibited. Anyone who's observed to be texting or dialing will be referred to the Vehicle Incident Review Panel and may be disqualified from driving and face other administrative actions. Important point. Congestion is the primary reason why driving on campus is challenging. There are other very simple things that you can do to reduce the risk of being involved in an accident. First of all, respect your vehicle and your environment for what they are. Essentially, you are steering a projectile weighing several thousand pounds through a campus in which the students are distracted by handheld cell phones and music players and under the stress of getting to class and getting a passing grade. Plan your trip to minimize your time in the vehicle and the number of stops. Secondly, slow down. There's an inverse relationship between your speed and your safety. The slower you travel, the more time you have to see and respond to people, and the more time they have to see and respond to you. Finally, walk when you can. Enjoy the campus and stretch your legs. You're guaranteed not to get into a vehicle accident if you're not driving. You can also take campus shuttles to get to your destination. Another factor that is unique to the university is its landscaping. UWG takes pride in its lush campus and has a wide variety of trees and shrubs. The cost to such greenery is that it often presents a visual hindrance. This foliage may delay your opportunity to see pedestrians and conflicting traffic. In this location, in front of Z6, you can see that the juniper and conifers flank the steps that lead to the parking lot. A person could be in the street before you even see them. Another obstruction to pedestrian vision is what's in the actual road itself. Parallel parking spots present visual obstructions between pedestrians and vehicles. As a driver, you should always be vigilant for pedestrians that may be negotiating around vehicles in parallel spots. The same is true in perpendicular spots in our parking areas. As a driver, you should appreciate that the other driver's vision may be obstructed by another vehicle parked in an adjacent spot. While driving in parking lots, be extremely careful and drive slowly. Anticipate that someone will appear behind the parked vehicles. And finally, the majority of drivers on campus are young, which places the entire campus at a higher risk. Appreciate that students are less experienced and may engage in riskier activities. In this actual picture, a student vehicle is attempting to pass a motorized cart, but the driver does not consider the oncoming traffic, or the vehicle backing out, as a higher probability to have an accident. All of these factors, a high density of vehicles, multiple obstructions to vision, and an inexperienced driving population all contribute to an increased risk of injury, liability, and property damage while operating vehicles on campus. Important point: you can reduce your chances of being in an accident on campus by slowing down, reducing your distractions, and respecting your vehicle and your environment. Case file number 4. A maintenance employee stopped on a slope near a building. He put the vehicle in park, did not set the parking brake, left the keys in his vehicle, and entered the building for a few minutes. When he returned, he discovered that the pickup truck had rolled forward and struck the building. Use of university vehicles is governed by the Motor Vehicles Policy. This is divided into several sections. We'll take a look at them one at a time. First of all, unless specific permission has been granted by risk management, university vehicles may only be operated by employees to conduct university business. This policy reflects both the law and the parameters of our insurance coverage. We will define university employee and university business as we progress in this module. Secondly, the Motor Vehicles Policy supplements the Board of Regents policy on driver qualification. Essentially, all employees who may drive in the course of their employment, whether they're driving every day or once a year, are required to be qualified every year. How often you drive and what type of vehicles you will operate will determine how much training you will need. This training module satisfies the minimum requirement for most drivers. However, you must complete additional training if you are a frequent driver, operate a motorized cart or all-terrain vehicle, transport students, drive a 15-passenger van, tow a trailer, or operate specialized equipment on our streets. In addition to the training, we are required to check your driver's license prior to permitting you to drive a vehicle. This is done through your department as part of a pre-qualification process. Your motor vehicle record, or MVR, may also be reviewed. This is typically done annually for frequent drivers, but the university reserves the right to require an MVR review as a condition of permitting travel or operating a university vehicle. Important point: in accordance with policy and as part of the qualification process, employees who may drive a vehicle in the course of their employment will have their driver's license checked annually. The Incident Review Panel is another mandate from the state. All vehicle accidents and incidents will be reviewed. The panel's purpose is to determine if an accident was preventable or if there was a willful disregard for policy or the law. The panel, in turn, forwards recommendations for remedial action to the designated officer, who has the authority, under the Board of Regents policy, to disqualify drivers or assign remedial training. There are progressive penalties for unsafe drivers. You may be disqualified for a period of time or even required to take a defensive driving course at your own expense. But most corrective actions will simply be online training that you can take at your convenience. Under the policy, you have the right to represent yourself at the panel and to appeal any decision made. Additionally, UWG subscribes to the Report My Driving program mandated by the state. All tagged vehicles and trailers, with the exception of emergency response vehicles, are required to have a decal that invites a caller to report on your driving. This program is not intended to punish drivers. It is simply a tool to identify risks. If a driver complains about your driving, you will be required to take online training. All subsequent calls within a 12-month time frame will be referred to the Incident Review Panel. The motor vehicles policy also prescribes measures that must be taken by departments to keep their vehicles safe and secure. This is a departmental responsibility, but you can do your part by locking the vehicle, securing the keys, and reporting any problem or concern through your chain of command. Finally, the vehicle use policy lists the driver responsibilities in vehicle operations. In addition to obeying all motor vehicle laws and driving safely, you are responsible for being adequately familiar with the controls and operations of the vehicle, especially if you are operating a cart or specialized equipment. Using the vehicle only to conduct university business. Operating the vehicle only when you are carrying a valid driver's license and a State of Georgia liability card. Renting vehicles in accordance with state and Regents' policies and procedures. Notifying your supervisor if your driver's license is suspended or revoked, and notifying the local law enforcement if you are involved in an accident. On campus, this would be university police. You are prohibited from operating the vehicles while under the influence or suffering the effects of alcohol or other drugs that may impair motor skills, alertness, or decision-making ability. Using a cell phone, radio, or other handheld communication device while driving on campus. Texting or dialing while driving, on or off campus. Smoking in vehicles. Pushing or towing another vehicle or trailer in a fleet or rented vehicle without express permission from risk management. Additionally, when seat belts are provided in vehicles, they are mandatory for all occupants. Finally, when backing up a university vehicle on campus, drivers are required to use a spotter if one is available. 1 out of every 3 at-fault accidents involves backing up and could be prevented simply if one of the occupants got out of the vehicle to watch for cars, pedestrians, and fixed objects. There is no exact procedure on how to do this, but the driver and spotter should agree on a signal to stop. The driver should also keep his window open and listen for any voice commands. If you are involved in an accident, and it was determined that you didn't use a spotter when one was available in your vehicle, it would be considered a willful disregard for policy. The Incident Review Panel will handle this on a case-by-case basis, but the penalty may include a suspension of driving privileges. The same is true for dialing or texting while operating a vehicle. Important point. You are responsible for calling local law enforcement when you are involved in an accident. Important point. You are prohibited from operating any handheld communication device while operating a moving vehicle on campus. Every driver is provided a Georgia liability insurance card. They're also located in every state vehicle. While traveling or operating a vehicle on university business, you should have this card with you. The purpose of this card is to provide proof of insurance, but it has additional features as well. On the second page, there are instructions on what to do if you're involved in an accident. On the third page, there is important information on the limits of your coverage. On the back of the card are reminders of what you should do when you rent a vehicle. If you are renting a vehicle for university business, you should read both the third and fourth page of the insurance card. When you rent a vehicle on state contract, you should inform the agency that you're renting the vehicle under the State of Georgia contract, and you should refuse any additional insurance coverage since it is included in the contract price. However, if you're renting a vehicle from a company that is not on state contract, you should purchase the collision damage waiver, since there is no automatic coverage in effect. Other instructions on renting a vehicle can be found on the travel website. But remember, if you are renting a vehicle on state contract, it can only be used for state business. Important point: when you rent a vehicle on state contract, you should decline the additional insurance coverage. Case file number 5. A student employed by a sister institution drove a state vehicle to get a sandwich off campus. He accidentally drove through the storefront of the building. The claim was denied since he was not on state business. By law, the student was completely liable for the damage. There are 3 policies that are in effect when you operate a university vehicle. The auto physical damage policy covers damage to the vehicle. The liability coverage protects you and the university from the damage you may cause in an accident. And workers' compensation protects you from injuries that you may sustain. Let's start with auto physical damage. In order for the university vehicle to be covered for damage, it will need to be specifically covered in our policy. If your department has not selected this coverage and the vehicle is involved in an at-fault or no-fault accident, your department will be responsible for paying for all repairs. If your department operates a vehicle with this coverage selected and is involved in an at-fault or no-fault accident, they may need to absorb the $500 deductible. There are other exclusions to this policy. First, the vehicle is not insured if it strikes university property. That is, if an employee backs into a handrail, building, lamppost, or retaining wall, there is no coverage. Secondly, the vehicle is not insured if the driver is racing or otherwise using the vehicle illegally. Additionally, ordinary maintenance, degradation, or depreciation is not covered. And finally, and most importantly, the vehicle is not insured if it is used outside of the scope of the department's objectives. By law, the state can only insure its own property. If you choose to use your personal vehicle to conduct university business, it would not be covered for damage. The second policy that is in effect is liability. Do not assume that the vehicle you're driving has an installed liability policy. It does not. Our auto liability coverage is simply an extension of our general liability policy. Our vehicles are not insured for liability coverage. Our employees are. In the eyes of the law and our insurer, a vehicle is simply a piece of equipment that is used to perform university business. The liability coverage that an employee has while operating a state vehicle is the same as a landscaper has when he uses a chainsaw. If he's using it to take down a tree on campus and the tree falls on top of a vehicle, the accident is covered. But if he takes that same chainsaw home and fells a tree onto his neighbor's vehicle, he certainly would not be covered by the insurance that's provided by the state. The same is true for vehicles. If you're operating them within the scope of university business, you would be covered for any property damage or injury that you cause. However, if you use the vehicle for personal use, no coverage would be provided under our policy. There are no geographical boundaries for this liability coverage. nor are there any restrictions on what vehicle you're using. If you're using your personal, rented, or borrowed vehicle for state business, you are covered. But since the law only permits coverage to state employees, the coverage is only extended to university employees or non-paid workers who are enrolled in the university's volunteer program. The most confusing limitation to our policies is what is considered university business. It is very important you understand this because it serves as the basis of all claims and defines when you may or may not be covered. Simply put, university business includes any task that serves to accomplish your organizational objectives. In most cases, this is pretty obvious, but let's take a look at two examples to clarify. An air conditioning mechanic needs a part to service an air handling unit. He drives to the hardware store to purchase the part. He would be covered if he were involved in an accident, but on the way back, he stops by the mailroom to send off a personal bill. He is now conducting personal business and would not be covered. Another example. A faculty member drives to Savannah on authorized travel to attend a conference. She's covered, but she decides to stop in Macon to visit her parents. During this phase of her trip, she would be engaging in personal business and would not be covered. In Savannah, she decides to drive to the local mall to do some shopping and see a movie. Again, she would not be covered because the purpose of this excursion has a personal benefit and does not support the trip. Let's extend this hypothetical scenario. Suppose the faculty member decides to bring along her spouse, who is also a university employee, but the husband is only going as a companion. If he drives and is involved in an accident, would he be covered? The answer is no. Although the husband is an employee of the university, he is not within the course and scope of his job when he is driving the vehicle. There are some activities which are generally considered to be personal business and would not be covered. The first one is going to lunch. As a general rule, this is considered to be a personal errand and would not be covered regardless of whether you're eating on or off campus. There are two exceptions. The first is University Police Patrol Division officers in their patrol vehicles who may dine in the immediate vicinity of the campus. These officers may be recalled from their meal and may need the radio and equipment that's in their vehicles. The second is an individual who is on approved travel status. Meals support the trip, and since the employee does not have the opportunity to use a personal vehicle, the employee would be covered when going out to eat. Shopping is a similar deviation from course and scope. Necessary sundry stops are permitted: gas, maps, snacks, etc., if they support the trip. But shopping for clothes, furniture, or souvenirs does not support the trip. There may be instances when you are on campus and driving outside of course and scope. Again, going to lunch does not help achieve organizational objectives. Neither does attending benefit fairs, retirement receptions, or other campus events which are non-mandatory and to which you are attending as a participant. Additionally, personal errands, such as going to HR to check on your retirement benefits or stopping by the UCC to mail a letter, are not considered university business. Important point. While on approved travel status, you are not covered if you use the vehicle for a personal excursion, such as going to a movie. Case file number 6. A university employee used a leased vehicle to pick up his child from school. On the return trip, his vehicle was involved in an accident that totaled the vehicle. Our insurer denied the claim since the vehicle was not used for university business, but the other vehicle was determined to be at fault and honored the claim. Had our employee been at fault, he would have been responsible for paying for both vehicles and all medical bills. Should you be involved in an at-fault accident while on personal business, You may be breaking the law by driving without insurance and may be held completely responsible for all injuries and property damage. Since the insurance is defined by law under the Tort Claims Act, there will be little that the university can do to protect you, and you will stand alone. The consequences could be devastating. In a poster developed by Risk Management, there's an example that paints the picture very clear. It reads, "Would you trade this, your house, for this, a sausage biscuit?" Courts have seized homes to pay for injuries when the driver did not have enough insurance. The one time that you decide to use a university vehicle to pick up breakfast may cost you your job, your home, and your financial freedom. What if your supervisor tells you to do something that is outside of course and scope? This actually happened several years ago. A work team supervisor told one of his employees to go get lunch for the team at a nearby fast food restaurant. The employee got into an accident, and the claim was denied. The employee countered that he was within the course and scope of his job because his job description stated "other duties as assigned," and he was told to do this by his supervisor. However, it was determined that the supervisor did not have the authority to assign such a task. Other duties as assigned really means other duties as assigned to achieve organizational objectives. The supervisor was not acting in his role as a supervisor when he assigned this task. The employee should have refused the assignment and was personally liable for the damage that he had caused. Remember, you have both the right and responsibility to question how an assigned task achieves organizational objective. If you're not satisfied with the response that's provided, you can ask for clarification through your chain of command or through risk management. Important point. You can be held liable for any damage that results from operating a university vehicle for personal business. Remember, you can always seek clarification by calling or emailing Risk Management. The essential question will be, does the trip support your organizational objectives? Let's take a look at one more example. An employee is traveling to Orlando for a week-long training session during the summer. He wants his wife and kids to join him so they can enjoy the various attractions that are in the local area. Since the purpose of his trip hasn't changed, that is, he is required to travel in the performance of his official duties, there is nothing that prohibits him from using a fleet car or renting a car on state contract to make the trip to and from Orlando with his family. He has received prior authorization from the department head or other designated official for the performance of travel. However, there would be no in-place automobile accident medical coverage for the family. Upon arriving at the destination, the family could not use the vehicle for their personal activities since this would not support the university purpose of the trip. Important point. You are not covered for any driving activity on campus, only when you are in the course and scope of achieving organizational objectives. Many departments depend on carts for everyday use. The benefits are obvious. They are convenient, relatively inexpensive, and durable. They can be modified for their intended use, and they can access areas on campus impassable for other vehicles. But carts are also the most dangerous vehicles operated on campus. In fact, of all the recordable injuries resulting from university vehicle accidents from FY03 through FY09, 100% of them involved motorized carts. Georgia law is vague when it defines the parameters in which carts may be operated on the public roads. In accordance with Title 40 of the Georgia Code, carts may be operated by licensed drivers on roads with speed limits less than 35 miles per hour and only during daylight hours. Since most streets on campus are public roads, you are responsible for obeying all traffic laws. An exception to the daylight hours law is low-speed vehicles, which may be operated on public roads at night. The only low-speed vehicles on our campus are the GEM cars. Statistically, university motorized carts have the same accident rates as other vehicles. Because of their low speeds and rugged design, there's a lower than average percentage of vehicle damage claims. However, they have a higher proportion of at-fault accidents, liability claims, and injuries. The best way to show this is with side-by-side examples. For all accidents involving vehicles other than carts, 61% were determined to be the fault of the university employee. However, for cart accidents, 71% were determined to be at fault. Only about 1 in 100 university vehicle accidents results in a workers' compensation claim. In carts, this ratio is 1 in 5. Full-time employees were at fault in 57% of cart accidents, while students were at fault in 100% of their accidents. We will discuss why carts are more dangerous in the next section. There are 3 reasons why motorized carts represent the overwhelming proportion to our vehicle-related injuries. These reasons are the perception of motorized carts, the use of motorized carts, and the standards of motorized cart engineering. Let's talk about these one at a time. First of all, we tend to perceive carts as a relatively low-risk mode of transportation. They're small, slow, and easy to operate. They're also fun to drive and are not confined to the roads. We're more inclined to permit students to drive carts than we would be to hand them the keys to a pickup truck or a sedan. It's not very often when we enter a golf cart and think, I am now about to drive the most dangerous vehicle in the university fleet. Another perception is that the cart has similar braking and steering responses as their own car. It does not. The second reason why carts are risky is how we use them. The entire campus becomes our road, and we forget that unlike our engineered streets, there are no safety standards designed into the campus for cart usage. But the most important reason why motorized carts are dangerous is because they are simply not designed for safety. They're designed for utility. Consider the vehicle that you typically drive to work. There are federal standards that ensure that this vehicle is engineered with a high regard for driver and occupant safety. There are preventative engineering features that reduce your chances of getting into an accident, such as specific weights and centers of gravity, headlights, turn signals, and brake lights, mirrors, windshields, windshield wipers and defrosters, ergonomic controls, and braking, steering, and rollover standards. In this same vehicle, there are also engineering standards that will reduce your chances of being injured or killed if you are involved in an accident. These include airbags and seat belts, bumper systems, crumple zones, engine hinges, safety cells and roll cages, and safety glass and padded interiors. What is a motorized cart required to have? Nothing. With the exception of low-speed vehicles, motorized carts are designed to be operated off-roads and are not subject to highway safety standards. In fact, because of their off-road intent, motorized carts typically have a higher ground clearance and therefore have a higher center of gravity. This affects steering, braking, and rollover propensity. Additionally, since carts are made for off-road utility operations, they're more rugged than a typical sedan. With no crumple zones or other engineering features that absorb the energy of an impact, the vehicle will stop more abruptly, sending the driver and occupants forward. And without seat belts, inertia will propel these occupants forward against the steering wheel, windshield, or other obstacles. There have been several injuries that wouldn't have been sustained if carts had been equipped with seat belts. In 2006, a student worker had to receive plastic surgery on his face to repair the damage when he lost control of the cart and hit a guardrail. And in 2008, another student worker broke her front teeth against the windshield of a cart that hit a light pole after only traveling a few feet. Safety starts before you even begin driving. There is no substitute for practical experience. Learn the controls before you take the wheel. Practice in a safe location so you can get the feel of the vehicle, including acceleration, braking, steering, and turning radius. Learn to operate the throttle and brake to avoid jerky starts and stops. Additionally, you should read the manual, paying particular attention to load limits. This information should also be located on the vehicle itself. Once you're familiar with the controls and limitations of the cart, you're ready to operate it on campus. You can reduce your chances of injury by starting out each and every time with a posture of safety. If you simply remind yourself that this may be the day that you're involved in an accident, you will be more prone to stay focused on what you're doing. Make sure your windshield is clean and your mirrors are adjusted. Know where you're going and how you intend to get there. When starting out, you should look around for any persons or obstructions. Avoid jerky starts that may allow you to lose control of the vehicle. Once you're underway, stay at a safe speed, giving plenty of space between yourself and the driver in front of you. Always look in the direction of travel. Be aware of your surroundings and keep both hands on the steering wheel. Use good judgment when operating the cart. Keep your body parts in the vehicle. Reduce your distractions by refraining from eating or drinking while the cart is in motion. Don't engage in any horseplay. And above all, stay focused on what you're doing. If you have the choice between driving on the street or sidewalk, you should choose to drive on the street. However, if you find you have to operate the cart on the campus at night, you should drive on the sidewalk. Always approach turns and ramps with caution and maintain a safe speed. Do the same on wet surfaces and near pedestrians. If you come to a blind corner, slow down to a crawl and tap your horn. As you navigate the campus, please remember that pedestrians have the right of way, and be aware that although you may see pedestrians and other vehicles, they may not see you. When parking a vehicle, you should come to a complete stop before getting out. Avoid heavily accessed areas where you may impede the pedestrian traffic flow, especially around building exits. You may park temporarily on sidewalks, but provide enough space for a wheelchair to negotiate around your cart. Avoid parking on inclines unless you chalk your vehicle, or pick a spot where a natural obstruction would stop the cart. Failed parking brakes have resulted in an average of one liability claim every year. Finally, you should remember to report any concerns or unsafe conditions to your supervisor. We have damaged property and injured people simply because we have failed to report issues such as faulty brakes and steering flaws. Finally, a word about the insurance that covers you for injuries while you're driving, or workers' compensation. You are covered for injuries and illnesses that arise out of the course of your employment, but the same parameters are in effect. If you are injured while you are driving or performing a task that is outside the course of your employment, you may not be covered. We would welcome your feedback on this training module. If you have any suggestion, comment, or criticism, please call, email, or stop by the Office of Risk Management, Environmental Health and Safety. This concludes the training. On behalf of the Office of Risk Management and the University of West Georgia, I'd like to thank you for your participation and to thank you for all your efforts in keeping our community safe.